I've come here as a pale ale version of Nigel Farage.
Enter the Moet, we love the champus. We buy a drink, get drunk, hit the canvas. Enter the Alizé, add the lemonade. Ain't over, cause the fat girl went away. Fat girl went away, she ain't singing. Drink makes the girls look hot when they're minging. But it's not about teetotal, not sober. Buy another drink, get drunk, fall over.
Buy another drink, get drunk, get down. Finish your drink, then get a next round. Just stop thinking, carry on drinking. Don't give up, we don't like letdowns. I like the girls that are up in this club, but I don't wanna be no one's Casanova. Tonight's all about partying, so just
buy another drink, get drunk, fall over. Fall over.
That word plebs. James Mogg.
I thought for some reason that question might be directed at me, but possibly something to do with my voice. Anyway, I think we need to have the right people for the job, and we need to ensure that we have an education system that provides as good a system in the state as is got from private schools. I was at Eton, and I was enormously lucky to be at a school that has fantastic facilities and fantastic teachers. I don't think you want to say just because people have been to Eton or similarly good public schools that they should be excluded from public service. I think that would be a mistake. But I think you do want to have a state-funded education system, and I think Michael Gove is doing this, that will ensure that the highest quality education is given to everybody in the country, and not just to those who go to the public schools.
Do you ever call anyone a pleb?
Of course I don't, but I think people in public life ought to show good manners to the electorate who put them there. And the police are part of that electorate. I am not in favour of people being impolite to people who are serving them and their country. I think that is a mistake, and it's very good news that Andrew Mitchell apologised for it, which he was right to do.
Okay.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. We've got a very distinguished panel here. We've got an election coming up in the United States, debates coming up on Monday. We have a question from Thomas Swinburne. We have 2 minutes to answer, but let's just have the question, please, Mr. Swinburne.
What impact would a President Trump have on the UK?
OK, very brief answers, because it's a bit... Well, you can't give a short answer, really, and make sense. But, Jacob, you were said to be a supporter of Trump. You said you'd vote Republican. Are you a vote supporter?
I don't think it's wise of British politicians to be rude about potential foreign leaders. I think there is a serious chance that Mr. Trump will win the presidency of the United States.
And it would be a total disaster.
And it is overwhelmingly in the British national interest to get on with the President of the United States, whoever that is. In a dangerous world, our most important ally is the United States. We are not picking that president. It is being picked by Americans according to their own democratic processes. I have confidence in the American people to choose their own president. It is not for me to second-guess them, but it is for the British and in the British interest to get on with whoever is the President of the United States.
Well, Julia Huckleberry.
Now, Jacob, you supported Boris for the leadership, didn't
great
you?
man.
Until he was...
And very popular on Have I Got News For You.
You supported Boris until he was stabbed in the back by Michael Gove. Then you supported Gove until he was knocked out. And then you supported Andrea Leadsom. Presumably that was kind of just for a laugh. And in any case, are you really a fan of Mrs May and the Chief Whips?
Oh, absolutely. There is greater zeal in a convert than there is in somebody who starts off down the road, though I certainly accept that my predictions during the Conservative leadership campaign were not always correct.
You see, you can do the diplomacy thing, whereas Boris really can't do it, can he?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I think he's marvellous. He's a jolly good fellow.
Oh, you're just being silly now.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I think he's a great representative for the country on the world stage. People want to meet Boris. They're interested in him.
They want to be offended by him. They want
The row today is that he said something that most people know to be true. So I can't see why people should be too upset. I think the
But
shock...
then Mrs May said it wasn't true.
No, Mrs May said it didn't fully represent government policy. That's a different thing. The British people have voted to leave. The House of Commons has voted to leave. Professor Grayling wants us to stay. I'm with the majority.
May I? Because this phrase, the British people, I do think it's the most terrific catchphrase. We're really talking about a quarter of the population when you sum up who that 37% of the restricted franchise was.
Well, I think this is such nonsense. The figure gets lower and lower
Jake,
for Professor Grayling's convenience. The British people voted in a fair election, and a majority voted to leave.
A minority
I think to call
of them
them the
did.
British people is extremely fair.
A minority of them did, and I have to say, with very great respect, that to see an old Etonian stockbroker on the far right of the Tory party representing himself as a tribune of the people, representing the interests of car workers in Sunderland, is mildly implausible.
Are you being Etonist?
What I want to say
I'm
is
not
that this
sure
referendum
that
was
either the
for...
Professor of the New College of the Humanities or I should throw stones at each other about our backgrounds.
Well,
Particularly.
let me say this, that it's not the people that Mr. Rees-Mogg is representing, it's his people. Because the kind of Britain that he wants, a low-tax Britain, a Britain where there isn't enough money for the NHS and for state education and for welfare and for
Well, there'll be more
environmental
money for the NHS
protection.
if we don't give it to the EU.
No, well, you want to
as has been
privatise it.
said.
I mean, you don't use it, you want to
I don't
privatise
want
it.
to privatise the
you
NHS.
not
I've never argued for the privatisation of the NHS. You're putting words into my mouth.
Do you think this shambles in which we find ourselves is in any way a respectable condition? But what do you think other countries are thinking? What's going on here?
I think you are classically overstating what has in fact happened.
The Prime Minister goes into an election looking for a major mandate for the biggest constitutional change in recent history.
And you call it a shambles. You say that it's a butcher's slaughterhouse. This seems to me an extraordinary
You use
thing.
that phrase, not me.
No, that's what a shambles means, which I'm surprised you don't know. Most uncharacteristic. It clearly isn't a shambles. What it is a less successful result than we had wanted.
Perhaps
it's not the large majority that we had wanted.
More legal
The Prime Minister's just accepted that it's a mess. It's the first time I've agreed with her in a very long time. And one way out of that mess is to accept that there has got to be a change in tone and approach on work.
Is a shambles a mess?
It's a difficulty.
Is a shambles a mess?
A shambles is a good deal worse than a mess.
So a mess is perfectly okay,
Hold
is it?
your horses. It's quite nice to get a word in edgeways occasionally. It is a difficulty internally for the Conservative Party because we did less well than expected. The government of the United Kingdom carries on. There is still a Prime Minister, there is still a Cabinet, there is still a civil service.
No
this
increased
is not,
mandate of any description. She did not get what she sought.
That doesn't make it a disaster for the country. That makes it awkward for the Prime Minister, and that's why she's apologised to the party that she leads.
We're one of the largest export markets for Europe. Why do you think Europe is going to give up on us if we've given up on them? So everybody claims that, you know, we won't have access to this market. All of Germany's cars are sold in the UK. So why are they going to give up on us?
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Well, the two members of the audience are absolutely right. Mr. Leonard put the argument better than I can. It is a wonderful,
in that case, I'll leave
exciting...
it to him.
Do you want to
stay
stop,
silent.
sir? You're absolutely right. I'm just going to reinforce his points. It's such an exciting opportunity, and the opportunity is through leaving the customs union so we can trade freely with the rest of the world, and that means we have to come out of the single market, which is the force of regulating us. And the problem with the single market is that means we are effectively in the European Union. And so when Remainers say they want to stay in the single market, that is code for saying they don't like the referendum result. So if we're really leaving, we have to be out of the single market. And the point you make, sir, on trade is absolutely spot on. We have a deficit with the rest of the European Union of between 80 and 100 billion pounds a year. We are the major customer for the European Union of any country in the world. Whilst we're still in the EU, the biggest customer is the US. Once we're out, it will be us. All those German car manufacturing companies. Irish beef is almost all bought in the UK. What about French wine? Are they really going to stop selling us champagne just because they're cross with us? I think it's very unlikely.
They will all have to agree together, won't they, Jacob? When you go through these different countries trying to itemise why people might still want to have a trading relationship with us, you forget the fact that when it comes to negotiating with the EU, all of them have to agree it. And we've already seen, for example, the so-called Visegrad countries, the Czech Republic and Slovakia and others, who are saying absolutely they are not going to accept anything that doesn't accept that we need to have freedom of movement for them to be here. So your idea that we can pick off these countries just doesn't work.
If they don't allow us to get out free movement to people and say they won't trade with us, there are 1 million jobs in Germany that relate to selling manufactured products to the UK. So that's quite an important economic factor. And if they say that, we fall back on WTO rules, which is an average 2.4% tariff. The pound's fallen by about 15%, more than wipes out the tariff. So the economic opportunity is huge. And as Mr. Leonard, you said, we need to be looking at the world. The next 100 years is not going to be about a sclerotic, failing European Union. It's going to be about China and India and Brazil.
We've heard from a couple
and that's
of
our
members.
opportunity.
Christopher Webb, since we're talking politics. Christopher Webb, your question.
Is
briefly.
Theresa May under any pressure to call a general election in the spring?
Which Jeremy Corbyn says he's putting the Labour Party, if he wins, on a footing for a spring general election. The question is May under any pressure to call one? Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I don't think so. I think we would win by such a large majority if we were to have one that there isn't huge pressure coming from outside. No leader of the opposition ever says he doesn't want a general election, for the obvious reason that it looks as if you're frightened that you won't win. However much you know it'll be a disaster if you have one. So I don't think she is under pressure.
But you say not from outside. What about pressure from inside? Go for it. Go for it.
Tory strategists.
I think we would look deeply opportunistic if we went for one in the spring. Well, I do perish the thought because I think the electorate is pretty high-minded. And I think if they thought we were taking an advantage, an unfair advantage, by bringing forward an election over our Labour opponents, that would actually harm our chances and we would do less well. If the left push for it and demand for it and agitate, we would win very comfortably. So I wouldn't be wholly opposed to us giving in to that pressure if it came. but I don't think it's that. Thank you. I agree with Norman Lamb's point, which I think is spot on, that good government needs strong opposition. I like it from a narrow party political point, that there is a hopeless opposition, but I value the Constitution even more than I value narrow party political points. And I have a sneaking admiration for Jeremy Corbyn. I think he is an amazingly honest and straightforward politician who says what he thinks. But what he thinks is both dangerous and unelectable. And if the Labour Party... It would be dangerous for our national security, it would ruin our economy. It is a really dangerous programme for the nation. And sensible people like Liz Kendall cannot, in good conscience, go on the front bench with that sort of programme. And if Labour is to win elections, it needs to win seats like mine. My seat was a Labour seat between 1997 and 2010, with marginal boundary changes. I happen to think if Liz Kendall were leader of the Labour Party, I would be facing stiff competition at the next election. If Jeremy Corbyn is leader of the Labour Party, my majority will go up. And that is a bad position for British politics to be in. We need... Well, that's a bit mean when I said I agree with you. But we need serious opposition. It's really good for government. It makes government think about things more carefully. It's good constitutionally, and it is the proper process. But Jeremy Corbyn cannot be that. And what he is doing is destroying the Labour Party, in my view, and that is a short-term political advantage for us.
Man there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the spectacles.